Hi, everyone. Welcome to 1301. I see that some of you have already started putting your opening discussion post in there for this week. So this lecture video is just going to give you a quick foundation for some of the key concepts of our class and then get you ready to start on your essay 1. So I am going to move pretty quickly through these things here. And then, of course, please let me know if you have any questions. You're also going to see the prompt sheet for our paper under the content tab. If you've already been looking at the modules that are there, you'll see the way that we're going to use different tabs in D2L. So the content tab is going to be very important. And then also collaboration discussions is where we will put our discussion posts. And then course activities assignments is where you're going to find drop boxes. So depending on what we're turning in, we may turn it in as a discussion board, which means that the whole class can view it, or we might turn it in as a Dropbox file, which means only I would be able to view it. So I'll kind of guide you and let you know where to turn things in throughout the semester, but hopefully you've already looked at the syllabus, you've already started kind of peeking around in there and seeing what we've got posted in D2L. So let me go ahead and share screen and I will just get us started on some things here. So English 1301 is a foundational class for most majors and things that we want to study, because the skills that we work on in English 1301 really do serve as a foundation that you can apply to different disciplines, because it's all about how to communicate, how to make sure that we are communicating in a way that fits the situation that we are in, using writing to consider and think about ideas and then express those ideas. So English 1301 is a really important class that I hope you get a lot out of our time in working on this class and working through the concepts that we have, the communication and the research skills that we're going to work on along the way. So I do have some tips to suggest to kind of just help out for success this semester, just some tips. And those are things like making sure that you, and by the way, I don't have any like subtitles here. I didn't really need anything there, but making sure that you're checking those weekly modules. I am going to post them by 7 o'clock Central. I think this very first time it might become 7:30 Central by the time the recording processes. But about 7:30 on the Friday night before that week starts. And that's because I want you to be able to start on the weekend if that works better for your schedule versus waiting until the Monday or Tuesday of the week of. So when you can, go ahead and look at the weekly modules when they come out. And so you can get started and kind of get a heads up at what's coming up for that week. Make sure you read all of the instructions really carefully. This is very, very important for all classes, but really for an online class. A lot of what is written in the instructions is designed to help you as you independently kind of guide yourself through some of these assignments. So that means a lot of the questions you may have may already be answered by the instructions, possibly. And it also means that completing assignments is going to require you to pay attention to everything that you're asked to do for that assignment. So really recommend reading all instructions carefully before you submit your assignments. Make sure you watch all of the lecture videos as well. There will be times in the lecture videos where I'm going to cover things or I'm going to talk about some different requirements, and it is going to be only available in the lecture. So making sure that you have that full explanation of what we're doing from the lecture videos. That's going to be key. And then use your resources if you need tech support. You have access to 24/7 tech support at Lone Star, so make sure that you are using that as a resource if you need it. Make sure to check the course calendar before the start of every week, because I've already got scheduled what we're going to be talking about and the due dates that we have for assignments. So it is adjustable. If we may have some extra things that come in there, we may adjust the timeline if we need to, but pretty much it is laid out for you to see in the course calendar. So have a look at what we're going to be working on that particular week as sort of a heads up. Make sure to plug the assignments and the deadlines into your own planner or phone instead of relying on D2L's work to do feature. Some assignments are going to be plugged into that, so they're going to pop up, and some are not. Some assignments are just going to appear in the weekly module or in the course calendar, but they may not be linked to the work to do section of D2L. So be careful about that. We're usually going to have 1 or 2 assignments each week. So, but those assignments are sometimes ones that you're going to work on over time instead of trying to do everything all at one time. So, which is my next point here, break the assignments up into smaller sections to work on over time. And then another thing, just in writing, I mean, this is a writing communications course here. So I recommend spending at least as much time revising the paper if we're writing a paper as you do initially writing it or drafting it out. So a lot of times we have the tendency to just add a little bit to get to our word count, look over it, and then turn it in. But I am really going to counsel you that for success in this course, what you are going to want to do is to spend a lot more time revising your papers before turning them in as a final draft. Now you have this really great resource here. I have the link. Mavericks Research is a place for online tutoring, in-person tutoring, research workshops. They have all kinds of great things happening on that website. So please go to that. It is also linked under the content tab there. But there are lots of resources and support opportunities through Lone Star, virtually and in person. Okay, so overall tips for success there. And I think just in an online environment, especially keeping track and reading instructions super carefully, that's really going to help with what we're doing and to make sure that you stay on track throughout the semester. So I wanted to talk a little bit about the writing process today. And this is I think, a very useful chart here to kind of have a look and start thinking about ourselves as writers. If you don't already think about yourself as a writer, but you're going to always go through a writing process. And you may have heard about the writing process before. It is what we call recursive, which means that this process can continue. And once you move from phase to phase, you may go back into an earlier phase along the way. So like when you are pre-writing, you're thinking about ideas, you're figuring out how you want to structure your ideas. Then you start drafting and writing things out. But as you're drafting, you may brainstorm again. You may have a new idea and come back to that pre-writing phase and then go back to drafting. Once you start revising, that may generate a new idea, or you may figure out that you need to draft a whole new section there. So these kinds of phases that you go through, pre-writing, drafting, revising, proofreading, and publishing, these are recursive, which means until you publish, until you turn it in or submit it, you could go through these phases multiple times. Now you'll see that the proofreading phase is what we commonly call the editing phase of a paper, and that is at the end, and it should be something that you try to wait for, because you want to make sure that the sections you have in your paper really are the ones that help you to answer that prompt and help to make sure that you're not doing things like maybe repeating the same idea or having something where you accidentally go into a different topic. So waiting to edit is a useful tip there for the writing process. Along the way this semester, I want you to think about exploring the writing process and what works for you and what is going to help you to be a stronger writer. So the process that you have right now may have some components of it that are holding you back, or maybe it has components that really are the best thing for you as an individual. So be thinking about that and be ready to start exploring your writing process. Do you spend time making an outline and pre-writing, or do you just launch into it? Should you try out some pre-writing or some outlining along the way this semester? Have you thought about the environment that you're in when you write or when you try to draft? I have some strategies that I can share with you along the way to help with the writing process, but everybody develops an individual process through time and through being open to trying new things out with writing. So we're going to be doing some reading this semester, and as one of the foundational concepts that we have, it's really important to think about academic reading strategies. So I have some of those posted on this slide, and some of you may consider yourselves very strong readers. I'm talking in this way as, not reading for entertainment, but reading for a higher academic level. So reading something that is challenging in some way. This could be portions of a very challenging textbook for a class. This could be a scholarly academic journal article that you find through the research for a class project. But we're trying to process and we're trying to make sure that we're interacting with these more difficult pieces of reading. So I just have some tips there. You want to be as active as possible when you read, and it just helps us to focus and it helps us to remember. So things like noticing the title of an article. Who wrote this? What year did this come out? Is it divided into sections? And what are those sections or subheadings? Try to find the main ideas of something that you're reading. So main ideas are generally going to happen at the beginning of a section, maybe the first couple of sentences, or at the end of a section, even though, they can happen in the middle, but they're usually going to be at the very beginning of a paragraph or at the very end of a paragraph. So look for the major statements that are made. Skim over that and then go in and read. So skimming is good. You can usually find the places where you need to go in and do some reading in depth. And skimming can also help you get a good overall picture of what's going on. Make sure you read more than one time instead of reading just one time. So read more than once. I don't know if you have ever watched a movie more than one time. I know I have, but you definitely get a better sense of what's going on the next time that you see the movie. You're going to see all kinds of things that you didn't notice before. And the same thing happens when we read. We're asking our minds to process a lot. So having this processing, giving us more opportunities at that, another chance to read it, you're going to see and understand things on a much deeper level the second time that you read something. Also recommend reading out loud, and not just the things that we're reading for a class, but also what we write, reading our drafts out loud as we're checking them, as we're thinking about them. It can really help us to understand and to see more. Try talking about what you're reading to somebody else, explaining it. I'm reading this article and this author is talking about doing this, because as you explain it, it is going to help you to better understand it and then to be more interactive with it. Make sure that you're annotating. Some of you may already have a process for how you like to annotate, but taking notes, giving your reactions, your questions, highlighting key terms, using context clues and a dictionary for your important terms, writing the main idea of each section in a phrase next to it. That one's really helpful, I think. If you have like something that allows you, like a device that allows you to write notes on the side of something that you're reading, or if you have a printed copy of something or a printed textbook, writing in a phrase, what's the main idea of this paragraph? And then doing that for every paragraph. That's going to help you to process that whole section and also help you to see how those sections are organized. I have a couple of websites here just for extra help on reading strategies, but reading is definitely, like, reading at that level is a skill, and it is one that we can use strategies like this to become stronger readers. And reading and writing go together. Anytime that you're able to further process and deeply understand a piece of reading, you're also seeing examples of how ideas can be expressed in writing. You're going to be able to bring some of that back into your writing and to be able to really talk in a more advanced way about the research that you're doing when you're writing a research paper. So academic reading strategies, so just a moment for that, because if you haven't tried some of these, definitely recommend trying these strategies out. So rhetorical appeals. Okay, so this is a very big shift in our conversation today, and this is into our week 2 material here. So our class is called Composition and Rhetoric. That term rhetoric is a fancy term that basically means that we are using language and communication effectively in order to persuade or be convincing. So that's our definition of rhetoric, but rhetoric has many different definitions out there and can be, you may hear that word in a lot of different contexts. So when we're thinking about rhetoric, we're thinking about how to use communication effectively. And when we're talking about the rhetorical appeals, we're talking about using these three appeals here, ethos, pathos, and logos, in order to try to persuade whoever is listening to us or whoever is reading what we're writing. So the rhetorical appeals are three major ways that people try to be persuasive. You may have heard about them in the past. They come from, back in the ancient times that Aristotle identified these, and they haven't really changed that much since then because people are still very convinced by ethos, pathos, and logos, or some combination of these three. So they're fancy terms here, but basically, if you're trying to convince someone by appealing to ethos, it means that you're trying to show that you are a trustworthy individual, you have experience, you know what you're talking about, and that's why you can be convincing in this topic. That's why they would be more likely to listen to you. So ethos is when you use your experience to show that you have credibility as you have a solid reputation in that particular area or topic. Ethos is also involved in appealing to value. So for example, if I'm trying to persuade someone to donate to a children's fund and I want to use ethos, I would say something like, I really would love for you to give our foundation your donation. I've been working with this foundation for the past 15 years. And in that time, I have seen how well we are able to use donations in order to reach the largest number of children in our area possible and provide assistance with food and counseling for children. And it is so important to protect the children in our community and make sure that they have what they need in order to be safe and to be successful. So I am appealing to ethos the whole time there because I'm talking about experience and working with the foundation, and I'm talking about appealing to values, wanting to protect children. So, and by the way, I did make all of that up, and I haven't had the years with a foundation there. I was just using that as an example. If I was to try to appeal for the same thing, I'm still trying to get donations for a children's foundation and I want to use something like pathos. Now I'm going to try to convince by using emotions. So if I want to do that, I might show or tell a story of a child in the community who was struggling and then was helped by the foundation. I'm going to use emotional language when I do it, and I'm going to use possibly some visuals that spark some emotional reaction, and the story itself will spark some emotion. So with pathos is one where somebody strategically tries to appeal to emotion, and they use the emotions that they think are the most beneficial for the audience to feel at that particular moment. So that is going to be pathos there. Okay, sorry about that pause there, everybody. If that was a glitch in the recording, I had to take a quick call. But as we were saying, emotion is a very powerful rhetorical appeal, but as you may imagine, it's also kind of temporary because people's emotions change and shift all of the time. So when you're thinking strategically about what emotion to inspire in an audience, you would match that with what you're wanting them to do or what you're wanting them to listen to. So, is it beneficial for that moment to have everybody feel inspired and hopeful? Is it beneficial for your argument to have people be, really wanting to change something, like changing a policy, for example? So what kind of emotion is fitting for that particular argument? When we evaluate someone's use of pathos, we're going to be thinking about how clever they were in the emotions that they choose to highlight. So emotions are going to be involved in visuals, in music, sound effects of a presentation, in the specific word choice that is used by a speaker or by a writer, and by the specific content or situations that are described. Logos is trying to convince by appealing to reason and logic. So logos is going to be something that when we use studies that have been done, facts and statistics, percentages, examples, and logical reasons, that is going to be logos. So like, for example, if I was to say, if you donate to this foundation, 100% of your donation goes to creating, a certain number of meals for the children in our area. That would be a use of logos. If I was to suggest, my proposal is that we need to build a community park over here. And one of my reasons is that a similar community built a park and they were able to have all of these benefits because they built a similar park. So logically speaking, we may expect to have some benefit from creating a park like this one. So using logical reasons, this is another thing that we want to try to do when we're making an appeal. For essay 1, what we're going to be doing is evaluating a speaker's use of ethos, pathos, and logos. We're going to be basically saying, did they do a great job of using these appeals to try to make their argument or not? And that's what we're going to write about for our very first paper. So when you look at, and I'll show you my last slide here. It's just like a thank you. Remember, you do have a lot of support through Lone Star, and you do have a lot of access to support, tech support, tutoring, all of those wonderful things. And if you are coming to campus, then you have even more things to see and to be involved with on campus if you want to. We have a lot of events on campus throughout the semester if you would like to plug into something like that. But I do hope that everybody has a wonderful semester.